One, two, three. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Build or Buy. For those of you that are online, it's about a quarter to 1 o'clock. That's when our meeting starts. So we'll be back with you at 1 o'clock, 15 minutes. We're still doing some preliminary, getting everything set up. Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about computer technology, probably some Q&A today, some interesting things with the RYZEN, some weird things with the Windows 10. Go figure. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a little bit. Thanks. Here's the mics when you guys get ready. Both of them are on and ready to go.
Hello.
It looks like a t-shirt.
keyboard and mouse, it is a reliable machine, you know.
Hey, that works.
I'm sure.
You have to go to the Windows screen and ask for the system information. Let's see.
Oh, it's okay. It doesn't matter.
How much was that?
I don't know if this was, with 8 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte hard drive and whoa, I don't remember what number mine was, but you know, again, it's got a crummy keyboard, but now it's I want to say 4 years. 4 years old. I know that's the point. I'm beginning to say that this ain't a bad
This
machine.
thing has it ready for new transport.
Well, that's the problem, right? Yeah,
Back and forth to Colorado,
right.
Oklahoma, Amazon.
I bought it because, well, the other one I got Windows XP in it. One of the reasons I got the Nova was I could still get Windows XP. The dilemma to that was that I couldn't.
Make sure you get that one back there. Because of the ransom.
Well, that was something else. I read that dirty article about they decided they won't update, they won't do anything with Windows 7 going back.
There are a lot of people. A lot of people see XP. Okay. Let me.
Well, so was
I worked at American General.
the Defense Department.
Defense Department. They got the same problem. We had over 10,000 stations, units,
Right.
and they wanted us to jump up from take not one but two jumps. They wanted two sets of licenses per machine. They wanted to give us a deal. A little change would have cost us $6 billion.
There was no way you could buy a few this month and a few next month.
Not, you know, business.
Okay, we got 8 minutes.
Food, so you don't do it. Trickle. But anyway, American General, on the 32nd floor, had a group of little elves, about 80 people. Windows 2000. Thinking along. They had XP or Windows 2000. Depending on which machine you had, that's what you had. I mean, I had trouble with my XP machine. The guy comes in and lunch, he says, would you mind if we run you up with Windows 2000? I don't give a shit what you do, as long as it's working when I get back to lunch.
Ah, bingo, now it shows up.
It was working when I got back. I don't know what it was. I didn't care. It's a machine. It's just a workstation. I would be hooked into, and then it had two mainframes, and then still have something going.
We must be on about a 10-minute delay today. They what? I agree. The first one is finally seeing it. The others are not yet.
If I open an application to get into my work, I don't care what the application is.
I attempted a dual boot Linux when I first got into it. And what I discovered that when I went to get into some printing and things like that, was they didn't make printer drivers.
Linux, that's a problem.
And that pissed me off because they do in England or in Europe. You know, you can get those drivers in Europe.
That's weird.
And you can get them over here if you're willing to pay and do complicated stuff. But then the question comes, can you scan? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm too dumb to worry about that. I got much better.
Okay,
interferes.
It shut down on the government.
Right.
Because the Republicans and the Democrats, he was shutting it down. Like that.
Okay, we got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
3 minutes.
Yeah, he did.
Jody, let me bring your mic over to you. Okay. Now it's showing up. Okay. Weird. So we're on about a 10-minute delay today. Two minutes. We'll get Joe mic'd up. Let's get a mic over there to John, too. If you don't mind, please, Robert. Yeah, John Lum. I'm going to visit with you in a little bit, John. Talk to you about your computer. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Build or Buy. It's about 1 o'clock. I want to thank you for joining us online. To remind everybody, we are streaming this meeting live every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday from 1 to 3. This is Build or Buy, how to build or buy a computer. We talk about computer technology, building, buying, and upgrading computers. Right now, we're in the process of building some computers, and John Lum is going to share with us because he's made some steps, a little more research, but it's still like, which camp do you go to? Do you go Intel or do you go AMD? So you want to share with us, John, kind of where you're at right now?
Yeah, I sent you a revised list of potential pieces for this computer.
Yes.
And Joe responded that the motherboards and the GPU that I had arbitrarily chosen are not well matched. That the GPUs will produce better, that the motherboards will produce better resolution, I guess, on the screen than the chosen GPU. So I guess I need to upgrade the GPU so it at least is as good as, or I don't know if you can make it better, improve on what the motherboards produce.
Well, that's a good point. Let's get Joe's take on that.
Yeah, you can. You can definitely get a higher priced GPU to put in there, but the question is why? You know, if you thought that was going to be satisfactory and you find out that your motherboard is even better than that, Why not just go with the motherboard? Why waste that extra $170 or whatever?
The only problem we have, though, is with the CPU, since that CPU does not have video on it. You're looking at a Ryzen 5 or the Intel. Now, the Intel, I think, has video on it, does it?
Well, yeah, the Intel was the way the one I checked. I checked
Yeah.
both of them.
So the Intel has an onboard video card, and the AMD does not.
The Ryzen
The
5,
Ryzen card does not. Yeah, I know
right.
those. Yeah.
If you want out of a Ryzen, you're going to have to wait till those APUs come out. The
Right.
motherboards have some technology that we can't use right now, and that's one of them.
Right. I noticed there were little precautions noted on some of them that if you use this with a certain combination, that your RAMs are going to run flat out all the time. They can't be reduced, and potentially, I suppose they overheat or something. Or like I noticed the RAM that's in my computer, the broken one, it's a DDR3-1600.
Probably.
But it actually runs at 1333.
That's the lowest default. You have to use the
Overclocking.
the overclock, the SPD,
Okay.
which is the
So-
one of the parameters in the BIOS. You set it to read that higher setting,
Yeah.
and it'll
Okay.
read off the SPD on the memory chip, and then clock it up to a higher speed.
Yeah, well, I had guessed that it was just so there's no point in pushing the RAM to their absolute limit all the time. So they put it at that somewhat slower speed. It maybe defaults to that slower speed unless you overclock, right?
Right, that's the default speed. You can set the clock higher on some of these. It's more successful on others than it is on some. For example, on some of the Ryzen machines, I've been through that before with like the machine that Lou built. She built a Ryzen 7 1700. I built a Ryzen 7 1800X. And the way her motherboard, which is a Gigabyte, and the motherboard I'm using, which is an MSI, responds to the RAM overclocking is different. So we can't just make a blanket statement. So on your old machine, it's running at DDR3 1333. It can probably do DDR3 1600 without a problem.
If I were an overclocker.
Well, that's not necessarily overclocking.
Oh, okay.
See, it's only called overclocking because they haven't changed the standard.
There's a JDEC spec.
They outgrew the standard, and JEDEC hasn't made any changes to it yet.
I had never questioned it because that's kind of what I assumed, that it's kind of a default setting. And I noticed on at least one of these motherboards that says, I can't remember the exact term now, which one it was, but if you use this CPU, then on this motherboard, then the RAMs are going to run at their highest rated speed by default, or maybe only run them at their highest rated speed. So maybe that isn't something you want to do.
Well,
I think you're getting caught up in something esoteric. I wouldn't worry
Yeah.
about the speed of RAM.
Maybe.
I would focus more on what you're trying to achieve with the computer you're building.
and keep in mind, if it's going to run at that, they've designed it to do that.
Okay. Well, I guess. Well, so the thing is, if I'm going to use the Intel CPU, then I really don't need that video card, unless I'm going to buy a really expensive video
That's right.
card.
And you're not going to get one for $170.
No. So for the best bang for the buck right now in that realm, I agree with Joe. I think you're better off with an Intel machine as opposed to a Ryzen machine for that class because the video is on board. And that particular CPU, we can go to that computer, Lou. Thank you. I just pulled it up on Newegg. That one will support DDR3 or DDR4. It shows it's got Intel HD Graphics 630. It's not the greatest, but it's adequate because that says that'll do up to 4K.
So I guess an easy solution would be build it without the GPU, and if I later decide that I need the GPU,
You can add it.
one.
Exactly.
Because
And that's the way to go.
not that hard to do.
No, because you can add it to either one, but you won't have any video on the AMD machine. See, the AM4, it's kind of tough. The AM4 supports a whole lot of technology, but not everything is out yet. For example, we have the Ryzen 7, we have a Ryzen 5, now the Ryzen 9 has been announced. The Ryzen 9 is probably going to be what they use on the Epic PC. From what I can tell, it's not going to be on an AM4 socket. It looks like it's going to be a server CPU, but it looks pretty exciting. Love to get my hands on one and build a machine around it.
And it ain't gonna be cheap either.
Yeah, and it won't be cheap. It won't be cheap. But the fact that it's been announced is kind of exciting. So on the desktop, we're still in the same place. But for the machine you're going to build, which is not really a desktop machine, it's a desktop form factor, but you're looking at something for a multimedia PC. I agree with Joe. I think the Intel's a better way to go. If you were to go AMD, then you would step down in technology to the older technology, which is at the most based on the FX chipset, which is the AM3 Plus socket.
Oh, the
Or
Oh,
because
I
you
see
want
what
video
you're saying,
on
right.
board, because you want video on board, then you're looking at an APU. And the APU has the CPU and the GPU built into it.
Right,
To get that technology, you step down even further.
right, right.
So for the money, to stay up with the technology, I think right now on that class of a machine to have video on board is Intel.
Just go with the Intel and upgrade it later if I feel I need it.
If you have a need for it. So as we take a look at the specs you've got, I'm going to pull that up. I PDF'd it. You sent me an RTF document. So you're looking at an Intel Core i5 7600T. You're going to be looking at probably the either Asus or Gigabyte. You're looking at the H270M chipset, $110 or $90. So those two boards. Which one are you leaning toward?
I had no preference.
No preference yet? I would look at the two and see, are they both micro ATX? Is the form factor micro ATX on both of them?
Yes.
Yes, they
Okay.
are.
I would take a look then at the feature set and see as, if you can, that's one of the nice things about Newegg. You can take a couple of boards, pull them up, and then compare the specs and get a roughly better idea. It's not always apples and apples, but sometimes it helps. It'll point out little things that you might not know otherwise. Your RAM's going to be the same. You're looking at DDR4, 2133. Now, that's probably reading the SPD, which is the, if you want to call it overclocking. It's not overclocking, but it's reading off the SPD what the memory is spec'd out to go to.
But that, when it's installed and running, it's probably going to default to 19 something, or
Whatever the default is what it'll go to, and if you choose that,
if you if I look deep into the specs, it would probably list the default.
if you
somewhere,
chose
right?
that high profile setting, then it will read whatever that spec is. And if Kingston says that'll run at 2133, and if the CPU allows it, it'll do it. So you're leaving out the video card, which I think is a good idea for the investment. You can add it later. And you're looking at a Samsung 850 EVO 1 terabyte SSD. Now, either one of these motherboards you've looked at, will they support an M.2 drive?
Sorry, say, will they support the?
Will they support an M.2, or do you remember?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is why are you choosing just a regular SSD versus an M.2? I thought space was a big deal.
Oh,
Hadn't really gotten
I'm
that
sorry.
far?
I get misunderstood your question. No, I do not know if they will or not.
Oh, well, let's go take a look. Let's pick up a board, the Asus Prime. Let's just go find out. I'll cut and paste, copy that. I'll tab over, Alt tab over. We'll bring up another tab on our browser. Drop that in, see if we can bring up something on Newegg. Okay, Newegg shows that board. Let's go to it. It's got 6 reviews. It's got 5 out of 6 stars. This says dual M.2. Kind of interesting. And it'll support up to DDR4 2400. As always, I like to look at the picture first and see what I've got to deal with. Then I'll go look at the specs. So let's bring that up. See if we can get a better picture. They don't give you much of a picture on this. Wow. Okay, let me zoom in on it best I can. M.2 screw package, which is good to have. So you got 4 memory slots. So it'll probably support up to 32 gigs of RAM. And up here at the top right, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll support 4 SATA drives. So 4 SATA drives plus a couple of M.2s. And I can see the screw pattern for one right here. and I see the screw pattern for the second one right up here. So that'd be number 1, and the lower one would be number 2. You've got 2 slots for video cards. The first one's going to run at 16x, which you can add later. The second one is probably going to run at 8x. We'll have to take a look and see what the specs say, even though it's a 16x slot. And if you notice this little connector here at about the middle edge on the right side of the motherboard, that's a 19-pin connector. But if you look on the back side of the board, where my mouse is, let me zoom in on this a little bit, you've got another M.2 connector. Oh, and I see we've got 2 more SATA connectors. So we have 2, 4, 6 SATA connectors, and we have an a 19-pin USB 3 connector, and over here a 19-pin USB 3 connector. These other boots, of which there are 3, those are probably USB 2. Nice little board. What do you think, Joe? Does that look like USB 2 to you?
No, I mean, I don't see the ones you're talking about.
Which ones you looking at?
Same one you're looking at, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it. Doesn't that look like USB 2 right
No,
there?
he's not. Oh, I can't tell that by looking at them. They're USB. I'm sure they're USB.
It's got to be
Like front panel USB, you know.
Yeah, it's got to be USB 2.0.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you that one right there is USB 3.0.
Yep.
19 pin, and then there's one up at the top on the back edge. Let's go over to Joe's computer, number 5. Yeah, right there. Doesn't that look like one?
Yeah, that's the 19 pin.
So there's 2 19-pin connectors. We're starting to see that. The reason I'm looking and noting that, on all the new boards, we're seeing that on all the new boards. 2 USB 3.0 connectors. Let's take a look at the back edge, see what we've got. Okay, for the I/O, there's your video. You've got 3 connectors, maybe 4. I see VGA, DVI.
Looks like
That I'm not sure.
it looks like what do you call
You
it?
think it's USB 3.1?
No, possibly.
You can't see it? Okay, we don't want that screen up, Lou. That's the screen we want. Okay, I'm not sure about that one, but that is HDMI.
That's HDMI,
And you've got 2 USB 3. That's the blue ones,
and these are USB 2.
probably, and then network above it. So let's check the specs and see what it actually says it is. Sometimes one will be right and the other will be wrong. I like to look at a picture first. Then I'll go read the text. So I'm going to go look over here at, where did it go? Specs. Okay, shows what it'll support, shows the chipset, shows the video integrated. 4 memory slots. Oh, it'll support 64 gigs of memory. PCI Express 3.0 by 16. And the other one, wow, that doesn't even run at 8x. It runs at 4x mode. You'll probably never use it. 6 SATA, 2 M.2. I'm looking for a video connector. HDMI, DVI, and D-sub. So is that other port on the back? I don't see USB 3.1. I see USB 3 Type A. I'm not sure. What we'd have to do is go bring up the manual and take a look at it.
Well, yeah, it's the display port. That's the one that we were looking at that we couldn't find and recognize.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, sorry, I missed it. Looked like mini display port to me. If that's display port, that's mini display port. I know what it says. But you look at the size of the connector. That's a little rascal. Anyway, so you got 4 video ports on there. So you'll be able to connect whatever you need to, and you're probably going to use HDMI. Yes, Robert? Oh, let's do that. There was some specifics on the M.2.
Here we go.
You got it up, Joe?
Yep.
Okay, let's take a look at yours. Let's see. M.2 with an M key, SATA mode, and an X4 PCI Express, which means that it'll support an NVMe drive. Nice. Both of them.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is kind of ridiculous to put an NVMe drive in there. 2 lanes as opposed to 4 lanes. And you'll notice it says when a device is in SATA mode is installed in the M.2, socket SATA port 1 cannot be used. And when it's in number 2, socket SATA port 6 cannot be used. You'll lose 2 ports. That's just nice. The fine print, at least they're starting to tell that. In the beginning when that started happening, we had to find that out after the fact. And it was, oh, by the way. Yes, sir. Yes, Robert. Can we get a mic on Robert so we can hear him, please? Y'all be sure and raise your hand so we can get a mic. Thanks, Robert. Robert to Robert. Yes, sir.
Are those speeds for the M.2 better than the Gigabyte? You know, there's Intel, I guess, was 35,000 or something, and Gigabyte was 25,000, and I don't see any such number up there in terms of the bandwidth. So I'm wondering if you actually do get full M.2.
We would first have to go check the specs on the Gigabyte board, see what it supports, and then we'd have to drill further probably into the
Well, I'm
manual.
talking about an older Gigabyte board, the one that I have. It has a spot for an M.2, but it will not go as fast as the equivalent Intel.
Right.
And so I'm looking at this one to see what it does, and I don't see that number. To see, you know, what is the number? I can't recognize it as the speed that you can get out of that M.2.
Again, we'd need to go take a look at the manual and double check on it. We might could find it on the website. Sometimes this will be stenciled on the motherboard, but I couldn't tell you right now to save my life as I look at the stencil. It doesn't say,
What are these numbers, Gil?
so we'd have to look it up.
2242, 2260, and 2280.
That's the size of the stick of chewing gum.
Oh, okay.
We'll be using the 2280, which is the long one, 2280 millimeter. I've never seen a 2260 or the 2242 in an M.2 that supports a drive. They've always been other devices. But they're there, and they'll support them. They're all 2280 as far as I've ever seen. So that's a very good question that Robert Collier asked. But before we drill into that, what I suggest we do, we've taken a look at the ASUS. Let me go pull the specs up on the Gigabyte board with the Intel 370. I'll bring up another tab. And instead of going to Gigabyte site, let's first go to Newegg. So I'll hold down the control key because I'm going to come back to this, and we'll go check Gigabyte site in just a minute. Okay. Now this board has 4 reviews. Wow. 3 out of 5 stars for 4 reviews. It's not doing too well. Layout looks good. It's got display port on it. What I'm looking for is on the stencil. That says 32 gigabytes. That's a full speed M.2 drive, so that's an NVMe. The first one may be full speed, and I only see 1. I'd rather have 1 that goes full speed than 2 that I lose ports on. But I'd look at the reviews and see what the other users are complaining about. Now, let's see the specs on this board. i7, i3, and i5. Same graphics. 1920 by 1200. It'll do 4K through DisplayPort. Let me get on the zoom in on this. So DisplayPort will do 4K. HDMI will do, interesting, 4K, but look at that, 4K at 24 hertz. So if you want real 4K, you're going to come out of the DisplayPort on this one, which would be an adapter to get you into HDMI, because what you have to have is HDMI 2.0 to get it up at 60 hertz. It says it'll support 3 displays at the same time, 4 sticks of memory, 64 gigs, so they're both the same on that. Your overclock 2400, 2133, it says the default. 1 PCI Express slot by 16, the second one by 4, which is the same. And they're both PCI Express 3.0. 6 SATA ports, 2 SATA Express connectors. I didn't see that on the other one. 1 M.2, SATA, and PCI Express by 4. This does not show any exceptions. Now, even though this does not show any exceptions, that does not mean there are no exceptions. Again, we need to go to the manual and drill down. And the point of this is when you're trying to nail things down is to look and get apples and apples and see who's got what. Even though this information we're looking for is absent that Robert was talking about, we still got to go find it. Now, I saw it on the stencil on the board, and that's another reason I like to look at the pictures. Because a lot of time, whatever technology they'll support, they'll tell you. And if they don't tell you, it ain't there. Because they're just as proud of it as we would be.
I suppose when they first released this thing, they released like 5,000 pieces of it or something like that, and then a few months later, they've made some minor reversions and released some more, but the minor revisions might be significant revisions.
Well, now that's another interesting point. Let's go back over here to the website. Let me zoom out just a second. Let's go back over here to the browser, and we'll go to Gigabyte's site. And if you notice, that says revision 1. I'm going to hold down the control key. I got a feeling I'm going to be coming back to this again. This time we're going to Gigabyte's site. And if you'll notice, up here at the top, this is it, revision 1. A lot of times at the top of the screen with the Gigabyte's board, you'll see revision 1, 2, 3. This board is too new to have any other revisions. So what I want to do now that I've made note of the revisions is I'm going to go down and see if there's any BIOS updates. Because if people are having trouble, the BIOS updates, we're kind of not going in order. But the BIOS updates tell us a lot. There are 2 BIOSes, an F3 and an F5. The F3 was vCore voltage adjust, and the F5 is so you can support Intel Optane. Interesting. This BIOS prohibits updating to earlier version BIOS. In other words, you can't go back. Wow. Once you hit it with F5, you cannot go back. Good to know. And that date's 5/8/2017. Let's go back and look at the key features on this board. I'll zoom in on it. Now, I don't know how you're going to get dual NVMe PCI Express SSDs when there's only one slot. Doesn't make any sense. It'll support the Intel Optane if you want to go that route. Yes, Joe?
It says dual NVMe SSDs in RAID 0 support. Does that mean you have to RAID it?
It can't do that because there's only one M.2 slot. It doesn't have 2 M.2 slots. So I don't know why they're saying that.
Okay, which one?
Can we get a mic on Jack so we can hear him, please? Thanks, John.
The
Yes, Jack.
specs listed that as a X4/X2, so maybe it's either or.
Ultrafast M.2 with PCI Express Generation 3 and SATA interface. So again, what we should do is drill into the menu. Based on what I've seen, there's one slot, M.2, and that one slot can run at 32 gigabits. 32 gigabyte per second. So it gets the full NVMe speed. And they're both running on the Intel chipset. Here's another picture of the board. I don't see, give me just a second. I see one M.2 between the CPU and the first slot. I don't see another M.2. If there's another M.2 there, someone pointed out.
Could be on the bottom.
Could be on the back side. You're exactly right. That has happened before. Let's see if we can find a picture of the back side. We don't have one. Oh, and there's a connector that shows the PCI Express. Not that you're going to use it, but it's there.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I said PCI Express. That's the SATA Express. Scratch that, SATA Express. So we'd have to go into the manual and do a look on M.2 because if there's one on the back side of the board, I've seen that before, and that's entirely possible. I'm not wild about it, but based on the form factor, the size of this board, that must be where it's at.
what's the number of this board again?
This board is the, let me zoom back out. This is the GA GA-H270M, GA-H270M. Tell me when you're ready.
GA-270.
H270M. Ready?
270N or M?
M as in mother.
Okay, got it.
Mini dash DS3H. H is in hello.
Okay.
So we can bring up the manual and see what it tells us if that's what we need to do. Let's go back to support. Let's go look at the, not interested in drivers. I'm interested in the manual. Oh, wrong link. Here we are, manual. Chinese, I'm not too good at, so I'm still working on English. I'm not having real good luck with Korean either. So let's see if we can pull this down in English. Try one more time. There it is. Oh, wow, it got two of them. I didn't realize. Okay, we're going to bring this manual up, and I'm going to do a search for an M.2. That says 1 M.2. And that's what we saw in the specs, 1 M.2. Let's just keep going and see if there is one on the back. It's entirely possible. Again, it says here internal connectors, 1 M.2, 2 SATA Express connectors, 6 SATA 6 gigabit connectors. So from what I get from that, there's not one on the back of this board. The M.2 connector, singular, supports an M.2 SATA SSD and an M.2 PCI Express SSD, which would be an NVMe drive, and support RAID configuration through the Intel chipset. Please note the M.2 PCI Express SSD cannot be used to create a RAID set, either with an M.2 SATA SSD or a SATA hard drive, and can only be used to build. That's confusing to people. You got one slot, stick it in. This says it'll even support 110. I haven't seen a big one like that. They're all 80 millimeter. Pop it into that slot, screw it down. It takes the number 1 screw bit. Number 2 is too big. You're in business. Now here's the gotcha that always gets people in trouble. Installation notices for the M.2 and the SATA connectors. Due to the limited number of lanes provided by the chipset, the availability of the SATA connectors may be affected by the type of devices installed in the M.2A underscore 32G. Again, that reinforces it's a full bandwidth connector. Shares bandwidth with SATA 3. The M.2A underscore 32G shares bandwidth with SATA 3. So right here, if we put an M.2 SATA SSD, you will lose the SATA 3 connector. But if you'll notice, if we put an M.2 NVMe drive in, you still get to keep all your connectors. So what I'm saying is, from a resource standpoint, what does all this mean? I like the resource allocation in this class of motherboard better on the Gigabyte than I do the ASUS. But I'm concerned about the reviews. So what I want to do now is go back and check the reviews, read between the lines, and see what people are saying. A lot of times people are complaining about things that don't exist on a board. You ever notice that? Doesn't do this, doesn't do that? Well, it wasn't designed, might not have been designed to. So I'm going to go back over to my browser, and I'm going to look at the ASUS Prime, and I've got 6 reviews. And I'm going to look at it over here on, again, Newegg for the Gigabyte, and I've got 4 reviews. So let's look at the worst first. Let's go down here and find the reviews. There's only 4.
Is 4 even a significant sampling?
No,
No.
I don't think so. See if I can get that to come up. It's a new board, but if you'll notice on this page, there's 2, 4, 6 boards. When vendors lump stuff like this together, you don't know if you're looking at the review for the board you're looking at. Because there's 6 boards on this page, that may be 4 reviews for all 6 boards. Amazon is real bad about that. So I'm going to click on this and see if it'll take us down. There we are. Okay. DS 3H, and that is the DS3H. So we are looking at those reviews for those boards.
Question?
Yes, Joe.
John, what processor were you looking at, CPU?
We're
Yeah.
talking about Intel. I'll tell you. Hang on a second. You asked me to bring that up again.
Okay. Then you cannot use,
Yeah.
okay, 76. Okay, that first digit, 7 or 5, you said one of them was 5300 or something like that?
i5 7600T.
I had to
Okay,
get the piece of paper here. It's I5-7600T.
okay. Then the 7 indicates 7th generation. And the chips on the chips. If it was a 6700, that would be a 6th generation chip. So you're okay.
And that's good to mention that. Okay, here's what someone said. 1 star. Won't boot from USB flash drive.
That's serious.
Well, yes and no. Do y'all remember when we went through that with the flash drive? Trying to get Windows 10 installed? Do y'all remember the issue we had with the USB flash drive? Okay. Knowing that issue and reading what this says, Gigabyte USB installation tool for Windows 7 doesn't work. This person is trying to install Windows 7 on this machine. All the new hardware is geared toward Windows 10 installation. You got to run some tricks, and several people as well as vendors have some tools to do this with. Microsoft has some tools that they'll point you to that somebody else has made to do this with. You're going to be installing Windows 10 on this machine. So I mention that because the issue this person is having does not go back to the quality of that motherboard. That's where I'm coming from. Because they're trying to install Windows 7, I don't know which port they're trying to use. And I don't know if they've used the tool correctly. So I'm having to read between the lines. Let's go to the second one. Who know of a problem and sell anyway to customers? Well, let's see what he's talking about. Board powers up, starts to run, turns on and off. Nothing shows up on the monitor. I get no post, no video, so it can't load. Okay, he's using i5 7500. The 7500 and the 7500T are different chips. What's the difference in the two? Any idea? Exactly, I'd have to look it up too. So what I don't know is the turning off and on sounds like an issue with the RAM. Now it's 8 gigs of crucial DDR4 2133. That's pretty low end. So I don't know if he's got 1 stick in there or if he's trying to run 2 sticks. If we go back and look at the specs, a lot of the new machines are really finicky about what slot you're on for the RAM. It's not the way we used to do it. In fact, on these new RYZEN machines, it is the exact opposite of the way we used to do it. Let me see if I can show you an example. Let's go back and look at the manual.
Well, I hate using the RAM. You're going to put in 2 sticks, and it makes a difference now where you put those 2 sticks, right?
It does, but let's see if this book shows it. I don't know if the Intel is as finicky. Okay, this is what I like about a Gigabyte system. I like the manual because of this page they give. There's DDR1, DDR2, see? There's 1, 3, 2, and 4. So that implies DDR1 and DDR2, which is the slot closest to the rear edge of the board. You skip one and go to the next one. That's where you get your dual channel.
And since they have numbered them, those are the ones they want you to use in that order.
Here's the first reference. 1, 3, 2, and 4. 1, 3, 2, and 4. So now we're going to go down and find the text about this, and let's see what it says. Okay, it'll support 64 gigs of RAM. Yada, yada, yada. There's a little clip in here that'll tell us, as soon as I find it, it's very specific about the RAM. Installing the CPU, yep, that's important. Okay, installing the memory. Dual
Wasn't-
channel,
Isn't the one closest to the CPU the number one?
no. That's the point. It's the exact opposite now. For 2 modules, 2 and 4. See 2 and 4 here are the first ones? So you've got 1, 3, 2, and 4. Number 1 is closest to the rear edge of the board. And this says put it in 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are on the opposite side. As Joe said, what we're used to is the one closest to the CPU. It's the opposite. If there's 4 modules, then you're good to go. If you're doing 2 modules with 4 and 3, now, some of them will tell you for a successful boot, you have to go to a specific configuration, and it's the opposite of what we've been doing. I don't see that notation here. This says it'll work either way. But with the RYZEN, I had it on the machine we built with MSI. There was an extra FAQ in there in the manual stating this. I had the same thing on Lou's on her Gigabyte board, both with the X370 chipset. It was very specific on where that RAM goes. So this problem we're talking about, I wanted to see if that's what problem they might be having. Based on what this says, I don't see it. Now, if you're going to go with 1 module, do you see anything in there about using 1 module? Both configurations show 2 modules. So if this individual has an 8 gig stick of memory and he's trying to boot it with 1 stick, used to you could do that. This board does not say it can do that. So again, I'm trying to read between the lines.
So note number 1 down there at the bottom says dual channel cannot be enabled if only 1 memory module is installed, and which implies that you could do it, but dual channel wouldn't work.
It implies
obviously.
that you could do it, but I'm saying it may not work. It
Okay.
used to work.
It's kind of one of those things. You can do it, but it's not a good idea.
You can try it. You can try it and see what happens.
Well,
And the kind of boots that guy's getting sounds like the system is trying to reconfigure the BIOS. And Gigabyte is real good that if you monkey something up in the BIOS and Gigabyte doesn't like it, it'll shut down, come back up, and it'll keep going. ASUS has always been good about that too. If you do something you're not supposed to in the BIOS, it'll shut down, it'll come back. The MSI system that I built, if you did something that it didn't like, it just was gone.
for this any given amount of RAM, is there any particular virtue in using, say, for 16 gigabytes, using 2 8s or 4 4s?
Do 2 sticks. Whatever you're going to do 2 sticks.
Yeah.
Because that's where you get your maximum speed. Right, Joe?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you recall we used to have a choice in the BIOS of single channel or dual channel. And dual channel is faster because you can address 2 channels of memory at the same time. Single channel, you do this channel of memory and it's,
Right.
do its chores, then you go to the next one. So dual channel is considerably faster than single channel.
Probably a little bit cheaper too.
So let's go back over to the Gigabyte motherboard and look at these reviews. So we're trying to look at this and understand what the individual is saying, and I'm not quite sure that they're, especially if they built machines before, you can't take anything for granted. So, see, now there's a good example. The last 2 reviews, you got 5 stars. So we have 4 reviews. 2 of them were very negative. But reading between the line, I'm not sure if they're dealing with apples and apples. They may be somewhat confused on what they're doing. So the last 2, they had good luck with it. So whatever the issues are, I'm looking at the dates, 4/16/17, 4/9/2017, and these other 2 were 4/30/17. If there was a little more time between there, I could say it might be an issue with the BIOS, but they're all very, very close in proximity. So I don't think it's a BIOS issue. I think it's a user issue. So you want to be aware of what you're doing. Get your memory. Get a couple of whatever you're going to use. If you want 8, fine. If you want 16, fine. If you want 32, fine. But get 2 sticks. And follow the configuration. And I'm going to flip back over to the PDF file. And if you'll notice, you've got 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. And 1 is closest to the edge away from the, in fact, it's close to the power connector. That's another way to look at it. It's not closest to the CPU. 1 is the farthest away from the CPU socket. I think Joe's reference was the best. Okay, now let's go look at the reviews for the ASUS board. We've got 6. We've got 4 out of 5. Let's see what we got. Okay. Let me zoom in on this. First review here, 3 eggs. Here's a review. Pros, 3 stars. No, I'm not asking you to post this. When you review this, please know I'm not happy to know that you delete comments you don't like. That's why you have to use other sites, folks. What's he complaining about? I was hoping to get some insight on the power down problem from someone who'd figured it out, and it happens on other motherboards and Windows 10, not just this one. Power down problem. I'll have to do some research into that. Okay, here's the next review. Booted right up. Case 7 ready. I don't see how a case, okay. Okay, case 7. Boots up fast, seems stable when it runs. Why only 3 stars? Does not like a full shutdown. It turns out that Windows 10, by default, doesn't really shut down when you click shutdown. Okay, that could be an issue with a setting on the motherboard. You know, the wait states. Well, what happens when you hit the power button? Yes, Robert.
Didn't you find that Windows 10 doesn't shut down and it'll wake you up at night, or was that Joe? When you thought you turned the machine off and it was still there and would do update swap, maybe that was Joe reporting that.
No.
It sounds like a Windows 10 feature not to shut down.
That's what Gil was talking about, that to hear that female voice.
Oh, no, that was a network issue. That was a network issue.
But still, if you thought the machine was off, there shouldn't have been anybody speaking. So what I took back home from that, maybe I was wrong, was that Windows 10 doesn't really shut down.
No.
And I see him saying that same thing again right here.
This is
now, maybe
different.
I'm wrong.
This is different than what I was describing. I don't remember describing Windows not shutting down.
But the default in most machines that you buy nowadays or build, the default is go to hibernate or sleep. You can go to shutdown, but you got to look for it. But it's hibernate or sleep is what they do, because they want a fast boot. So you can get a fast boot in sleep very fast. The next fastest boot is hibernate, because it's still got to go to the hard drive and pick up that data and put it back together. But it's a lot faster than booting up from scratch.
But that is a real change, because what I recall last time I looked into it was desktops. They say don't hibernate a desktop. You can hibernate a laptop, but don't hibernate a desktop. So now you're saying with Windows 10, they're saying it's better to hibernate than to shut down. So that's certainly a change.
I don't hibernate Windows. I keep everything running. The only thing I shut down is the monitor. That's it.
Isn't the reason for that is if the battery dies while it's in hibernation?
Well, I'm running off a desktop.
Yeah.
All the machines I have running are desktop. Now, when I get a laptop, that could be an issue. But when I get a laptop, I'm planning on keeping it plugged in all the time for the same reasons, if I'm running the kind of stuff I'm doing right now.
I thought some of them now were switching out of hibernate if the battery got down to a certain point. So
Some were talking about, I think, about doing that, and we were trying to change that on, was it a laptop for Jim Fallon, or was it somebody had that? We're getting off topic again. Let's go back to this issue with this board about the shutdown issue. The thing I was dealing with was different than this. I like to look into this. The audio was distorted and breaking up. Simply downloaded the Realtek drivers from ASUS, installed, and audio was great after that. Okay, that's something to think about if you get the this Asus board and you have trouble with the audio drivers, you can fix it. Here's another nice board. He likes the BIOS, the unified EFI. You remember that's how we get our big multi-terabyte drives. Cons, only 2 external fans supported. You know, for the size and the form factor, you got to give and take. You don't want a lot of that stuff running off the motherboard. I mean, you do so you can control the temperature, but you have to compromise. And here's someone that put Linux on a board. He likes it, did everything for him. Another one, they like it. Only con, he said, should have gone ahead and bought the ATX instead of Micro. Great quality installation, first PC build, and forward-thinking features for when NVMe drive prices go down. Good luck with that. You'll have a new board before that happens. High quality, great BIOS. Okay. So from what I can tell, I don't see a problem with either board. And I would look feature for feature, and based on feature for feature, I like the resource allocation on the Gigabyte, but that's my opinion. One M.2 drive versus 2 M.2 drives. One M.2 drive where I can use everything, whereas 2, and it's going to limit me for resources if I use them. Now, I haven't looked at the ASUS manual. Yes, Jim?
Going back to the NVMe.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm looking at a Gigabyte GAZ270X just because last year when I went through this, it was a 170X, and I remember they said Gigabyte, all boards at that time supported NVMe. The new thing on the block now is that U2 with the Intel solid-state drive.
The U.2.
Exactly. What I'm saying is I'm looking at this Z270 from Gigabyte, and they have that U2 slot, and that might take up one of the NVMe slots, and I'm suggesting that that might be the issue with that other board. In other words, they're forward thinking for this other solid-state drive.
I didn't see support for U.2 on either one of these boards. This is a lower chipset. We don't want to confuse the issue, and that's kind of off topic.
Okay, sorry about
The
that.
H270 versus the Z270, completely different. This is micro ATX form factor. That's what's driving this build. So the micro ATX dictates the chipset we're going to use. If we can use a full-blown motherboard, then ATX is the way we want to go. And if we're going to do Intel, absolutely the Z270. But he's looking at an H270. So fewer resources. There's only so much space to do so many things. So again, to keep it apples and apples, looking at these two boards, you can bring the two up in a comparison, but based on what I've seen, I've made my case, but I'm not the one building this machine. I think whichever board you use, you'll be happy with, and I think the issues we've seen, I don't see are going to be a problem for you, because you're going to do an installation of Windows 10. I don't see you putting Windows 7 on it.
I looked at SSDs, and I looked at the M.2 1 terabyte Samsung, and
Yes.
it's only about $20 more than the SSD 1 terabyte from Samsung. So I guess there's really no reason not to use it.
Again, because of space, I've got M.2 now on 3 computers. And that's a big deal for me, having an M.2, that stick of chewing gum. If I'm going to have that on a desktop now, that's probably a technology I'm going to continue to embrace in the future because I want the speed. The first M.2 I used was a board like Robert Collier had, where I couldn't get full speed. So it's just an M.2. But then I built another one, and I did again an M.2 because I couldn't get the speed. But then when I could get the speed, I did like Lou, and I told her, I said, Lou, I think you're worth it. When we built the RYZEN machines, we used M.2s that were NVMe. And as I go forward in a machine, that spec that gives me that little stick of chewing gum on the motherboard, if I'm going to have that on a desktop, I absolutely want that on a laptop. And if I'm going to build, like you're going to build, John, a multimedia PC where space is an issue, once you put an M.2 in, it doesn't come out. So that it also changes your workflow. Instead of cloning the machine, you may clone it the first time, but you'll never pull the drive out until it goes bad, and you'll build a new machine before you get there. So instead of cloning it, you'll be imaging it and backing it up.
Well, I thought for having a regular SSD and buy a less high performance one and just keep it out clone to it, stick it in a file cabinet.
Keeps it simple. Exactly right.
Right. And,
But you've got to have a slot to be able to remove that if you do that
right.
methodology.
Yeah, there's got to be, well, I can put it on a, like a dock outside the computer and clone to that.
Depending on the case you're looking at, you could get some kind of a dock. Now, the docks I use is because I have to accommodate for 3.5 inch because of the other drives I use. But you could use an actual dock that accommodates an SSD
Right,
and maximize the use of your space.
yeah,
So it depends on how much maximizing of space you want, because the other end of that is your workflow to be able to do what you just said, to be able to clone that drive, pull it out, and put it up somewhere.
yeah. Space inside the case is, I don't really need to save, I think, because I'm not going to have like multiple GPUs inside the case or something. So the fact that I lose one SATA port by using an M-2 is not going to be a limiting factor, I don't think.
No, it's just FYI, be aware of it. What were you
Right.
going to say, Joe? Let you have a
I was
comment.
gonna say, I've never seen a dock that handles M.2 though.
I have seen a
No,
couple.
no. The dock would be for a regular SSD.
Oh, okay.
There
Same
are
card
some.
size.
There are some cases that you can put an M.2 in. I wouldn't actually call it a dock, but it makes an M.2 portable because
Right.
it then connects with a USB 3 port.
Yeah.
But then you also lose the speed. Robert,
Is there any reason not to clone your NVMe to a rotating drive?
you can.
Well, but it would seem to me that you would not really anticipate running from it, but you could. It would just be a point from which to restore.
Yes, that's what I
And
said.
so you
I
can
would-
store it in that medium. Don't worry about the fact that it's slower.
Yes, I'd clone the first time, but after the first time I clone, after that, keep in mind also, our issue with cloning used to be a big deal with Windows. Well, we don't have to worry about the keys as much with Windows 10, so once Windows 10 is activated, theoretically you're supposed to go through the process and be able to, it'll just install and go. There's some other stuff I've come across on Windows 10 that I came aware of last night. I hate to mention it, but it deals with the Windows 10 Creators Update, and we're going to get off topic if I get into it, but it has an issue with activation I'll tell you about later if we get back to it. Back to this computer you're trying to build. Let's stay on topic with this. Okay, we looked at a CPU, we've looked at a motherboard, we looked at a video card, and like what based on Joe said, in this class of a machine, I think you're better off with an Intel because you've got video on board. If you go AMD, you've got to step down to get an APU. And I've built a machine with an APU. I've got one up here, but it's the older technology. And we've gone as far as we can with that. We're waiting on an AM4 APU. It ain't out yet, which I think is real confusing to some people that are building AM4. So I guess the next big deal you've got your CPU picked out in your 7th generation. You've got a motherboard narrowed down to 2. I think you'll be happy with either one. The next big issue is probably going to be the case. And I'm going to go back over to the PDF file. And let's go from motherboards. We don't need to focus on RAM. We talked about the GPU and the SSD. You're going to have a case that can accommodate a couple of drives because you've got to have access to a Blu-ray, which I think is a good idea, and you're going to have to have access to a removable media, whether it's an SSD or another spinning hard drive. So we're looking for a case that's got possibly a 3.5 inch bay and a 5 1/4 bay, or 2 5 1/4 bays. So you're looking at Corsair, Cooler Master, Fractal Design, Apevia. Which one's your favorite? The top one?
I'd have to look at each one of them again. I don't remember. I chose them for their features and for not being extremely expensive.
Well, let's look at the first one.
I don't have them memorized, I'm sorry.
I understand. Let's go look at the first one and see what we can come up with on the Corsair. And 404 cannot be found.
That's the same problem I had. I couldn't look
That's
that one
really
up.
nice. So we're looking for a Carbide Air 240. All righty. Corsair Carbide Air 240. Corsair. I ought to spell that right. That would help. Carbide. Corsair Carbide Air 240. 90 bucks. Not bad. Let's look at the one at Newegg and see what we can come up with. Air 240, Mini ITX, 57 reviews, 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, at a glance, I don't see any external bays. Let's look at the other side. On the front, great, 2 USB 3 ports. I still don't see any external bays. That's going to be hard to put a Blu-ray in. Good looking case.
Just above the, on the front panel,
On the front panel, is there a door?
just above the 2 USB 3 ports,
Can we get a mic? Can we get a mic on John, please?
yeah, on the front panel above the plugs and ports, there's a couple of, I presume, for optical drives.
I don't see it.
There's 3 on the back.
I'm looking at,
On the Air 240?
Yeah, they're vertical. They're vertical slots.
So you say they're vertical slots. Can we get a mic on Jack, please? So they have to be in this air enclosure,
No, to the right of the vents there, right where your arrow is now.
right in here.
There are 2 vertical slots.
I
You
don't
just
see it in
can't
this.
see them. They're black on black.
I don't see it in this picture.
I'm looking at their website. Oh, you're looking at the Newegg. I'm sorry.
I'm looking at Newegg.
Yeah, I had that. I'm looking at the website here.
Okay, well
And
this.
oddly enough, there are 2 pictures of the front of the thing. This one has no doors. This one does have doors.
Okay, of the 2 cases that are available, the one that has the doors is not the one I'm looking at on Newegg. This is the one I see on Newegg that has
Yeah.
no doors. So the one that has the doors that you're looking at must be a different model, and it says Air 240 BLK22. That doesn't tell me anything. So there's another model, Air 240. So what we need to do is take a look at Newegg.
Well, I'm looking at their website, and I am looking at the opening page of the website, and it does not have those 2 doors on it. That's interesting.
I think it's a great idea to put that on there. So, let's see, Corsair SAIR, Corsair Carbide, 240. Corsair Carbide 240. Let's just see what else pops up. Corsair Carbide, Air 240. Corsair Carbide Air 240. Recommended by Johnny Guru. And while we're waiting for paint to dry, let's see if 2 cases pop up. Now the description on that while we're waiting says micro ATX and mini ITX, 3 internal 3.5-inch drive bays.
Maybe it is.
Won't do any
This
good to
is a
refresh the
bigger
screen because
case.
we'll lose this. See, it's spinning up here at the top right. So what I'll do, while we're waiting on that one, let's go back over here. Corsair Carbide, there's an Arctic White. Corsair Carbide, here's another one on Newegg. Let's try this one, see if we get anything.
I'm wondering if the one with the doors on it is actually a larger case. The Carbide?
0. Corsair Carbide. Oh, I spelt it wrong. Corsair Carbide, Air 240.
No doors?
Corsair Carbide Air 240. Spelled it correctly and doesn't show anything. Love it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you're
that's
right.
it. I'm
I
only
think it-
seeing the one case.
I think there must be 2 cases that look similar, but one of them is probably a bigger case, maybe not a micro.
Well, all I know is what I'm seeing on Newegg, and no matter what a vendor shows you, Lee & Lee is really good about this. It's what's available for sale. We might try somebody else's website and see if anybody else has another version of this. But this is all I see.
Yeah. I'm looking for on their website, looking for a spec sheet on this thing, and it actually, obviously, I'm not looking at the right place.
Corsair Carbide, again, I'm looking at not the manufacturer's site, but I'm looking at what's available for sale, and I'm only seeing one model. Okay, based on what I'm seeing that's for sale, That's a dead horse. So I'm going to go down to the next one, Corsair Carbide M2 Micro ATX. I'll try your link and see if we get anything. Bigger case, nice case, standard case. That possibly, we need to see what's available for sale. Neilbit's Tiger Direct, Amazon. There it is on Newegg. Out of stock. What I'm trying to figure out is that looks like a 5 1/4 bay, one 5 1/4 bay, and it says here yes, one 5 1/4 bay. So if you want to buy it, you're not going to buy it from Newegg. It says find a retailer.
Yeah,
Amazon may have it. And that's one of the reasons I don't put this stuff on the spec sheet anymore, because it's too easy to right click and go find it somewhere else. This stuff's changing all the time. I wouldn't buy that case for $148. That's what somebody wants to sell it for, plus $35 shipping. So I'd say pick another case. So you got 2 cases now. I'm going to close that. Can't get it, so I'm not interested in it. So your third case is another Corsair Carbide case, a little bit less expensive. Let's see what we can find on this one. This one's $50, plain flat front, Corsair Carbide 88R, Micro ATX, $50. Newegg, $55. Let's see what Newegg's got. $55, you've got one bay up at the front. One USB 3, one USB 2. I hate when they do that. I'd rather that be 2 USB 3 ports. Joe has always had the best luck looking at cases. One external 5 1/4 bay case. Okay. I like your first case. If it had those 2 bays, it'd have been perfect. Yes, Jack?
Corsair Air 540 is the one with the 2 vertical slots in it.
Corsair Air 5-port.
Okay, so it is a bigger case.
Corsair Air. Yeah, 540. Corsair Air 540. $130. Aha. You got good taste, Jack. Now there's your case with your 2 bays. Now that's a perfect case. Wow. So they're going to charge more to get those 2 bays. That's it.
Yeah, and I only need one.
Well, actually, you're going to need 2 because
Oh, I see. One of those could be a hard drive and one of them a optical drive.
one could be the hard drive, or it could also
All right,
be the
all right.
SSD.
Okay.
You remember when we started this, we said it could either be 2 5 1/4 or a 5 1/4 and a 3 1/2. You got 2 5 1/4, so you can adapt that to whatever you need. Now, what I do, if I were using that case and I want to put an SSD in it, I would put a regular dock in there that I could use an external drive. And if I chose to put an SSD in that external, then I put that in an IC dock. It's a sleeve in a sleeve,
Yeah.
but it's a standard that follows through. And I use this metal IC dock.
Yeah, I'm guessing in the optical drive, it's not a deal breaker, because I was trying to think the other day, how often do I actually use one? So an external one, it would do the job, I guess.
If you're not mastering CDs and if you're not putting Blu-rays in this to work with,
It's primarily an archiving thing that I'm getting it for.
you like the way I said that, Jack?
So, like I said, I was leaning toward these cases, but none of these, like I said, is a deal breaker. So,
Well, if it's going to be seldom used, you could just get that as a USB drive.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I like the looks of this cube. If you don't need the drives, I'd go with the less expensive. But if you've got to have those drives, this case Jack found, which is the same one, there's your 2 bays. That's a good looking case. It's interesting, since I built on this Corsair carbide case that I've got this, the machine built into for the MSI X370 motherboard with the RYZEN in it. Like I said, I built a watch because everything just fits. But if I had to take that motherboard out, I got to take the thing apart to get it out. With that liquid cooler up there, Corsair, I'm impressed. Quite a machine I've built. But I feel like I built a Rolex.
There was one, two, what was it? The fractal design, the last one on that.
Fractal design case. Let's take a gander at it. Oh, you got an Apivia on here. Do you want to look at the Apivia or fractal design? Fractal design?
Or maybe one of them, the case. The case sort of unfolds. I'm thinking maybe, was this the fractal design one? It would be maybe easier to build.
Oh, not necessarily. That may be the Apivia. We had that with the BTX form factor. We still see, when we're working on machines, on occasion, a case like that. I don't like them.
Okay. Well, it's not, I'm thinking easier to build, but I guess since theoretically you're only going to build it once,
Yeah.
it's not like it's something you're going to be opening and closing a lot. At least I won't be. You might be, but I won't be.
This is the one with the flip-top design. This is the Apivia.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that you got your two bays you were looking for, 3.5 and 5.25. But I prefer the ability to have two 5.25 bays. For me, it's more flexibility. And as far as the quality of the case, I know Corsair builds a good case. I'd built on a Corsair case a long time ago, and I really wasn't excited about building on another Corsair case. After I built with this one, I'm a fan. So the Core 1300, you got your two 5.25 bays. Just like you've got two fans up on top as well. Let's go see if we can find it somewhere. Fractal design, Core 1300. Fractal design, Core 1300. Does talking about it help?
I'm sorry?
John, does talking about it like this help?
Excuse me.
Now this doesn't show fans in the top. The one the manufacturer did.
Yeah, it shows space for fan. Oh, well, no, the fractal design has two fans on top. It says included.
I got a 1000. We're looking for Fractal Design Core 1300. Hold on a second.
Yeah. Well, I'm on their website. Sorry.
I don't see it here.
And I do like the fact that the weight of the thing is on the bottom. Like I said, I wanted the power supplies down at the bottom.
That case is out of stock on Newegg.
Yeah.
Oh, that's I see. You're looking at 1,000. Maybe the 1,300 is a discontinued model. I don't know.
I keep clicking on it, but it won't let me bring it up. Every time
Here we go, here we go.
Every time I click on it, it takes me back to the. This says 1300 in the subject, in the URL, but this says 1,000. It won't let me. It won't let me click on it. It just says out of stock. Takes me back to the 1,000.
Says unavailable.
Well, the fractal design case on the website, it shows those two fans on the top of the case are included, and it does have two slots on the front of the case for whatever.
Here it is on Amazon. Amazon says they've got it. Currently unavailable.
So maybe it comes down to which one I can find it on sale. Huh?
I think it's going to come down to which one you can find, period.
Mm-hmm. And you have not had or don't know of anybody who's had any really bad experiences with any of these companies, huh?
I've never used a fractal design case. I've never used Apivia. I think Apivia is probably a less expensive case. Seemed like I used some of those a long time ago on an Intel build.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't used one recently.
Okay.
But I know the quality of a Corsair case. And of course, I'm a big fan of two other cases we've used in the past. Name escapes me. Cooler Master. I like a Cooler Master case. They're built like a tank, but they're heavy. So I think this case you're looking at over here for the Corsair is probably going to be bang for the buck. I like that cube. Whether you need it with the 2 bays or not, that's your call. So based on what you got on your specs and where you're at, I think we've helped you a little bit. We've gone through the specs. We've narrowed it down on the motherboard. We've narrowed it down on the CPU because of the motherboard. But again, it's like Asus or Gigabyte. Which way you think you'll go?
Right.
Which way do you think you'll go?
Oh, well, I guess if I were to start buying parts this month, I guess with the Intel and the I don't know, the Ace, I don't know about the, I might be able to find one of those bundles.
You might try checking
a
out
few bucks
Micro
there.
Center and see what they've got.
I don't know. They advertise bundles. I wonder what if you went in there and said, I want this and I want this. Can you give me a price break if I buy both of them at the same time? Let's create a bundle.
Bend their ear and try them. Now, I want to touch on one thing here with your DVD burner. I agree with the brand, and I agree with the speed. My concern is the price.
Yeah.
You're buying a retail package, so you've got software with this drive.
I chose that one. I just went through a bunch of websites asking best Blu-ray burner, and there was a consensus that was the best one there was. So.
Well, for $130, that's a retail kit. You can get a burner for probably around $50 or $60 that has no software with it, an OEM drive.
Mm-hmm.
If you have software you like to use, then I get the less expensive drive. If you don't have any software, then that could be a better deal for you. It'll come bundled probably with CyberLink stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for $130, it better have software.
For a case?
No, for the Blu-ray burner.
Oh,
For the Blu-ray burner. And of course, that Blu-ray burner is Blu-ray burner and player, super multi.
Right.
If you want
It's a do-everything kit.
right, right. So did this help a little bit?
Yes.
And you have a power supply. What size power supply are you going to use?
I got that EVGA 750 watt. I think one click down from their best one.
It should fit the case because that new style, that new EVGA G3 is smaller with a 10-year warranty, so you shouldn't have a problem with it fitting in the case. And I don't see Andrew. Did Andrew make it today? Oh, there you
Yeah,
are.
he's back there.
Andrew, I got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I don't have your computer with me today. The good news is I don't have your computer with me today. No, it's going to need a power supply. I got it. It arrived Monday, but I haven't had time to put it in. So I'll get it in and bring it next week. Hope that's okay. But I got it up and running.
Take a look at the manufacturer here.
Let's go to Joe's computer,
Yeah,
number 5. Thank you. DIY PC. I've looked at those cases and I've been real tempted to buy one of those.
and looking at it here, it's got a one opening in the top for,
On the front,
yeah, I guess so. Hang on, let me get to it.
That's interesting. Last week I was at Micro Center buying just a small gadget, and they had a bunch of stack of those on display, that case.
interesting.
Yeah,
You got one
one slot there for your
burner.
burner, and that's it.
Now, if you use that for a movable drive, then no burner.
Right. But still, I think you're probably
that
going to
is that
reuse
an
your
ATX
drive
or a
more than you will
micro?
the burner anyway.
Do what, John?
I said, is that an ATX case or a micro?
It's a mini. I think it's a it's supposed to be a small one. What do you call them?
Micro ATX?
Yeah, let me
Oh, okay.
get rid of this.
Micro ATX.
Micro
okay.
ATX case. Micro ATX mid tower case.
So you got 140 millimeter LED red front and 120 millimeter red rear. 2 fans. Probably 2 fan headers, so perfect.
And the price is
5689, and it's available. There are 82 reviews on that case, 4 out of 5 stars.
We should go down there and take a look.
Well, this is on.
Well, I know what Micro Center has carbide stuff.
Well, this is not a Corsair case.
Corsair cases too. I mean, I could
It's,
And compare.
check out. So,
But this is on Newegg. So does help give you some more food for thought?
I'll go down to the build your own computer desk and see if they can make a deal.
Now, this is a DIY PC
Never heard of them.
Cuboid R Black. DIY PC Cuboid R Black.
Okay. And that's on
Newegg.
Newegg site. Okay. Is that shipping? In case I forget.
Free shipping.
in stock.
See, anybody that's going to build a computer, I want us to go through the specs and analyze and look at that, because sometimes two heads are better than one, and sometimes you'll see something you didn't think of, like some things that Robert Collier pointed out. You know, what speed do you get with this? I know you're going to get full speed with the Gigabyte board. You should because of the chipset with the ASUS, but I need to go back and check the manual. And we just went through this briefly based on what we know, looking at what we were looking for. But I think the reviews are really important on some of these components to see what people are saying. If someone has a legitimate excuse, legitimate problem, or if they have a perceived problem. Sometimes you have to read between the lines.
And if it's a recurring problem.
And if there's a recurrent problem, I don't know about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, enough about me. Talk
Okay.
about something else for a while.
Is your brain tired? I know I saw smoke. I figured the wheels were turning. Let me get back over to Builder Buy. I'm checking our stream. Our stream is showing up on YouTube. We are probably about 10 minutes behind. For those that wonder why we start the stream early, it's because of that delay and to give everybody time to find it. We try to set that stream up at about 12:30. Today, it was about 10 minutes till before we got it going. So 10 minutes behind, it should have showed up right on time. What are you seeing? 10-second delay? Interesting. When I started, it looked like 10 minutes trying to get it up. So that's good. Okay, I got an email from, if I can find her right quick. She sent this last night. And there was a problem getting Windows 10 installed. I think I sent it. And y'all remember? Okay, Sue had a problem getting Windows 10 installed on a machine. And whenever we find these little quirks, issues, problems, it's nice to identify. So I'm going to show you the email that she sent.
And her husband John couldn't help her.
Apparently it was quite a big deal. Want to know how we was all doing? This was with the Windows 10, from the Windows 10 anniversary to the Windows 10 Creator Update. And she spent 3 weeks with this. The short story is she had to remove her wireless network card, an Anatel PCI Express wireless LAN card, for the upgrade to succeed. The long story was she tried multiple times to upgrade, had all these errors, and she had to roll back to version 1607, but the message she received, I've got a stop error code on it. But what finally did it was removing that wireless card. Now, I mention that now because now I'll address the issue that we dealt with some time ago. Remember, when you mix technologies, you run into problems. And one of the technologies that we mix with is when we were installing Windows 10, we created a USB install stick. And what's crucial with that is because we're using some old technology, Microsoft is using some old technology for that to occur. When you create a USB thumb drive to install Windows 10 with, because it's going to format it for FAT32, it needs to be 32 gig or less. If you create that with a 64 gig stick, it'll look like it creates just fine. But when you go to install Windows, it ain't happening because it says there's something wrong.
Hello.
So you've got to
Hello?
install Windows 10 from a USB stick from a
Yes.
32 gig or smaller, because it will format format that out for FAT32. So that's one problem we knew about. And now here's another problem that Sue had, removing a network card. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, I became aware of some stuff with the OEM version of Windows for the Creators Update that they're supposedly taking out
Yeah,
the
that's good.
screen to put the key in.
Yeah, you know, if the girls.
Hang on a second.
If the girls
Joe,
don't
your
have it
mic's
when they
still
leave,
on.
Tell me about it, 'cause it's all ready.
Can someone let Joe know his mic's still on? Thanks, appreciate it. Technology's
Tomorrow's
great.
time.
Thanks, Robert. I got tickled on that. Y'all remember you used to at the board meetings? Ray Morris would take the mic to the, anyway, yeah. You'd hear that thing flush. I always thought that was funny. He did it on purpose, by the way. Is that your girlfriend?
It's my cleaning lady.
Oh, that's what we call her now, okay? We call her Gertrude at our house. I won't go into that. Gertrude is our house, but I keep thinking I'm going to have to fire Gertrude. Who's Gertrude? Whoever gets the job done. As my grandmother would say, it ain't going nowhere. It's going to be there, so don't worry about it. Okay, back to the computer. So this was a problem that Sue had. She sent this to me last night. And so if anybody has one of these, what's this card called? Let's see, an Anatel wireless network card. It could be an issue. So we've got the Windows 10 Creators Update. We've got the Windows 10 Fall Creators Update that's going to be coming out in June. Well, this is June, so by the fall, which would be September, and we still haven't seen the Windows 10 Creator Update out for everybody. Now, I have Windows 10 Creators Update on 2 computers. I have it on the RYZEN machine. So I put it on Lou's machine and on our machine. The problem I had on Lou's machine with the Windows 10 Creators Update, I installed Windows 10, I upgraded to the Creators Update, and then I activated. I should not have done that because I had a problem with the Creators Update, which was a result of a bad power supply. So I had to wipe that out, reinstalled Windows Creators Update. I couldn't activate. It wouldn't activate, and I couldn't activate. It said the key had been used. So even when I went down and tried to get it back in because I had activated in Creators Update, it wouldn't go. So be mindful, if you install Windows 10, activate before you get the Creators Update installed, so you can avoid that problem. I had other keys that haven't been used in eons, so I used one of those keys. Now, wait 6 months, we could have done that, but time was of essence. We need to get the machine up and running. And Lou will be able to send out a broadcast message probably in the next couple of weeks, because remember, next month, Joe's going to be gone for 2 weeks. That's the second and third Wednesday. So we'll be here the first Wednesday and the last Wednesday. So we have next Wednesday, the end of the month. Then we have the first Wednesday and the last Wednesday. The 2 Wednesdays in the middle, Joe's not going to be here. So, and I've got a video shoot coming up I'll tell you more about later. We've got one with Pat, and I've got another one with another lady. I keep this up. My goal is to get everybody at Cavatories that performs up on YouTube, if they'll let me. We'll see. So back over to the website. Looking at this email we had, anybody have any questions about that? Yes, sir. Yes, Robert.
If she had this card installed in this machine, it worked perfectly under the prior versions of Windows 10.
Apparently so.
And then during an update, it screwed up? And
It didn't lack the Creators Update.
It sounds like a Windows problem.
I agree. Which means the Creators Update is not ready yet for prime time.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. And that's why they're telling some people to wait until we push it to you. I'm concerned when they start pushing it to you, what we're going to get.
Same thing.
Yeah. People are going to have some issues, which is always the same issue we've had with Windows upgrades. We've had trouble with video drivers, we've had trouble with audio drivers, and number one, we've had trouble with network drivers. And right there just proves it again. There's a special that's up on Newegg that I want to mention to you guys today. I'm trying to see if I can find it. It was in the early access deals. It wasn't the UPS. I think it was a laptop. Yeah. And I mention this right now because Nick Streeter, did y'all get that email from Nick about some inexpensive desktops? They were refurbs available from, I think, Micro Center.
Yeah.
If somebody is interested in a computer that does something like that, his son is using them for point of sale systems, POS. I think he paid $150 for those computers. If that does what you need, that's great. Here's a computer that's $550. This is a laptop. It's a Lenovo IdeaPad. It's an i7, 15.6-inch screen, 12 gigs of memory, 1 terabyte hard drive. i7 7th generation. Wow. 2 stars out of 5, 4 reviews. I'd look at the technology and see what's going on, but the first thing I'm going to do right now is go look at the reviews. I've got to figure out other products. Do not buy this laptop. Lenovo doesn't stand by. This is one person's opinion, and you have to read between the lines. Pros, keypad was on the right. Laptop runs slow. Crashes often. Had to do a factory reset, and I've only had it since December 2016. Also tried claiming warranty issue twice on Lenovo. Even though I got an email stating it had been submitted, I never received anything back. Okay, let's see if these 2 reviews are the same person. One is anonymous on 5/18. It says verified owner. And the other is an individual, again, verified owner. 3/11/2017 and 5/18. I'm just concerned that this is the same person, they're the same thing. Laptop barely used since it was delivered. Spent most of the time in its box. Past 2 days. I've tried to go on the internet, search on Google, bring up the task manager, refresh my desktop, nothing. Computer hangs up for the next 15 minutes, and eventually Explorer pops up. Worst laptop ever. Worst laptop. Here's another review. Different individuals, same time frame. Woke up, went to power laptop, had been plugged in all night, power light came on for 5 seconds and flicked off. Someone else said it's a laptop. Really bad battery life. That would stop me right there. But I'd still like to look at the specs. You know, as far as leading, bleeding, cutting, and trailing edge technology, you've got to look at what other people are saying and let somebody else do the homework. Make it easy on yourself. So if we just look at the specs, it's got Windows 10 Home. You know, that's a flag for me, but I'd rather have Windows 10 Pro, but I could work with that. 12 gigs of DDR4, I'm okay with that, and 1 terabyte of storage, I'm okay with that. It also has an optical drive, a DVD RW, kind of old. It has Intel Graphics 620, which is adequate, shared memory. It has wireless LAN and gigabit wired LAN. Got an i7, dual core. Wow. I would stop at the resolution because it doesn't even do HD. It doesn't do 1080. 1024 by 768. So this does the resolution we were doing 10 years ago. And a 5400 RPM drive. I think I'd pass on that. What I'm trying to do is show you guys to look at the laptop specs and to be able to evaluate the things that are important to you, whether it's a desktop or a laptop. Say you've got 5 things that are important to you. Look at those 5 things. Change the orientation, changes everything. Change one thing, changes everything. And there's a laptop that I like the price. I like some of the specs. I don't like all the specs. And based on some of the comments, some of those are valid comments. Short battery life, I could see that. And that was one of the things, again, the laptops that I judge laptops by is the one that Lou bought, the one that Extruder bought, the one that Andrew bought. The Asus Zen 4K. It's not a true 4K, but it's a great laptop. Has an NVMe drive, at a decent amount of memory. Graphics are okay. At the time, that was the best available. Graphics are better now. It's going to always be better. And as Nick Streeter said, it has superior battery life. And battery life, I think, is a big deal on a laptop. Now, if you get lucky and get an Asus like Joe's got, you've had this how many years? 8 years?
9.
8, 9 years. Joe got his money's worth out of this. This sucker still runs. The only problems we've had have been with Windows and Microsoft. Thank you, Microsoft, because of Windows 10. That sucker still works. So he definitely got bang for the buck, whatever he paid for it. So just because you buy cheap doesn't mean you're going to buy good. How much was that laptop 9 years ago? $1,500?
I got it for $1,200.
$1,200.
It was over $1,500 at
Microsoft?
Directron, and I gave him a competitive price, and so
They matched it.
Which game came out and matched it?
I haven't been over there lately. Need to go back. Just haven't had time. Travel is not an easy thing for us. So anyway, that's one laptop I wanted to share with you. Got some video stuff I want to share with you right quick before this leaves my head. Again, the kind of projects I'm working on are some of the kind of things I'll share with you. One thing I've been working on is a mail merge that has turned out to be a little bit more complicated that I may share with you later. But anybody shooting video, for anybody that's shooting video, a couple things to think about. No matter what camera you've got, image stabilization is important, but image stabilization can be done one of two ways. No matter how good the camera is, it can be done through hardware, which is additional equipment, or through software. For example, if you've got a camera and you need something that's got steadier motion and it can only do so much, depending on whatever processor's in it, you can put it on a handy cam. That's hardware. That costs money, takes up space, weighs on the back. Or you can get a like a DJI Ronin, 3-4 point gyroscope type gimbal, and that'll really steady it up. But again, that's size and weight, takes it on the back. Then if you put on a vest to hold it and support it, that's just more gear. Another direction to go is software. If you need image stabilization, there's two programs. One from New Blue Effects, and another one from a company called ProDad Mercalli. There's an interesting video up on YouTube where ProDad Mercalli shows where they've got a camera strapped to the bottom of a jet, and so you see it doing all of this, but when you watch the video and how they stabilized it, it's very impressive. There's also some impressive videos on the New Blue Effects stabilizer, but not quite as effective as what the ProDad Mercalli does. But I want to mention those two. Yes, John?
On the image stabilization, you were talking about gyro stabilization and so on. There is an image stabilizer, a couple on the market that are just kind of a rod hanging down from the camera with a weight down there to stabilize it. Have you ever used one of those?
Like a Steadicam.
Maybe they're not worth the money. I don't know.
Well, for example, let me go to B&H. Let's see, B&H. B&H photo, let me do it this way. B&H photo video Steadicam. There's another way I can bring this up. Okay, professional stabilizers, the Steadicam. B&H photo site is slow to load, but once you're on there, it'll be pretty stable. Okay, here's a Steadicam. Right here, Steadicam Merlin. Okay, if you look at the price of something like this, there's actually two parts to this system. That, which takes some learning on how to use a product like that, and there's also a vest to help support it, but you have to learn how to use it. If you're actually going to go with a stabilizing system, you're better off. Let's see if I can find it. DJI Ronin.
Is that actually an active, some kind of stabilization, or just passive, depending on gravity? It's kind of hard to tell from that picture.
Okay, the first one I've just shown you is passive. This is active. That's a 3-axis gimbal stabilizer. The other one so I can have both of them up. I'm going to bring this up another way. I'm going to go look at one of the cameras we use is a Canon XA35. Canon XA35. It's available as a camera by itself or in a kit. Now in a kit, there's a Steadicam Merlin system available for this. The Steadicam Merlin system is two pieces of equipment. One, you've got the handheld part, but you've also got the mount that you wear. These have limited use, and you've got to learn how to use one of these. This is less expensive, but that's two pieces of equipment, one that mounts on the camera, and the other, the whole thing mounts to the operator. That's one way to go. If you really want a Steadicam and you're going to go hardware, you're better off with something like that. For example, one of the questions posed about somebody using a Steadicam was, say, okay, I'm on a boat and I'm on one of these masts and I'm shooting another boat. So you're dealing with a lot of extra rocking up and down. You do not want to use a Steadicam for something like that. Can't do it. You want to use something like this, you use gyroscope technology. It automatically will stabilize. So these are two ways you can go if you go hardware. But it's an investment, it takes space, it takes time. But that is a superior product.
The image stabilization in these cameras here has limited to, it's mostly like vibration. So there's a limit to how much
Yes.
image it can stabilize.
Yes, you can walk and shoot with most any camera, but I wouldn't run and shoot with a camera. If you're going to run, you ever watch when they're shooting video a lot of times? You might be either on a vehicle, and the vehicle will have image stabilization. It'll be something like a gimbal. And sometimes it'll be mounted to a vehicle. It might be mounted on a track. But there's going to be extra equipment. It's not just the camera itself. To be able to use something like the Merlin system, let me go back over there to that machine. To be able to use something like that, you've got to learn how to use it. And it's not going to be used in all situations. It has limited use. So if you're going to spend that kind of money, that's $269. Then you've got the vest, the whole kit together. That's $865. That's still a manual system. $865 versus a DJI Ronin. Now that's $1,000. It also does follow focus if you have a camera that can do that. So if you need stabilization, consider what your options are. But the other option is get a camera, because a camera by itself can get in lots of places where you can't get some of this equipment. If you're in a tight space and you've got some parameters, that means you've got a lot of movement, software may be your best option.
So that vest system you're talking about, the vest basically takes the load off your arm.
Off your arm, yes, and puts it
So
on
you're just steering it with your arm. You're not supporting it with your arm.
Well, for example, how long can you hold out an arm with a camera on? 5 minutes, 15 minutes? If you're going to stand there for an hour or two or three,
How are you going to hack it?
yeah, you ain't going to do it because you're going to be, the shake is going to be worse than what you're trying to get rid of. So then you want to have some kind of a vest. And some vests have this thing that goes up over the top that looks like you're, some kind of a space movie where you've got something that's hooked to your back to support it and center your load. So that way the camera operator can stand there and all day long. And then the next step is to go from someone that actually is holding a machine like that to a piece of equipment that holds a rig like that. Like that would be on a crane, and the crane would be on wheels. Or it might be a crane mounted to a car. But to get maximum stabilization, this is what you're looking at. Now with Steadicam, you've got Steadicam 15 support and Steadicam 30 support. A rig like that, that's $4,000. That's not something most people are going to go spend. Most people that would need a rig like that are either going to rent it if they're renting it for 2 or 3 days, and if they're buying it, they're probably renting it out. But it takes space to do that. So that's why I mentioned the software. The software is a simpler solution, an easier solution. And for most of the kind of stuff that people like us would be doing, it's a lot less expensive. But I want to mention these options because they're available in case you've never, or in case you have wondered. That's what they are. Now again, we're using Canon XA35s for 2 of our cameras. We're using 2 Canon G40s. Love those cameras. And at some point, I'll do something with a side-by-side, and just on the surface, what's the difference in a G40 versus what's the difference in an XA35? Well, based on time, it's about probably 15 minutes, 7 minutes at the least, because I have one battery. I hook up one battery, and I've got SDI out right into our video switch. Whereas with a G40, I've got to come out of the G40 into a converter. And the converter right now, we started using a battery. So there's no electricity plugged into the cameras or the converters, but it's a separate battery. Now those 2 cameras are side by side, so one battery I can do that. these other cameras are out away from each other. When we first started using the G40s, I thought, this is ridiculous. So all that time I spent hooking the battery and stuff up, I said, there's got to be an easier way. And I got to doing some research and found the XA35, and I said, that's it. Just need a bigger battery. Another thing we do is putting the quick mounts on those cameras. Those are from Kessler Crane. Anything that can help save time. And like now with Ben out of pocket, I need things that save time to get set up quickly. So, talked about an image stabilization. So we looked a little bit about computers. We looked a little bit about cameras, image stabilization. See, there was somebody else that was building a machine. Who was that? Oh, Nick, you had a question last week we didn't get to. What was that? You were going to ask me a question after the meeting? Folks, remember after the meeting, I am 100% focused on trying to get everything packed up. And right now, we have a new router that needs to be installed. Bob hadn't done it, so I'm going to probably do it today after the meeting. Because I don't have time to come back up here later, and it's just not working out. So that way we'll have internet with our Ubiquiti controllers, so when you guys walk in, plug in, and turn on, everything works. Do you remember what that question was? Anyway, if y'all ever have a question or something, please raise your hand. Tommy, you got a question? Oh, God, sorry. Well, that's a cable you got. Okay. Couldn't see. Sorry about that. So does anybody have any more questions today? Yes, Jack.
Comment.
Yes, sir.
In my search for the ultimate laptop, which is still, in my opinion, the Dell XPS 15, I found a company called High Devolution.
High Devolution?
High Devolution, H-I-D-E-V-O-lution. And for want of a better term, they hot rod laptops.
Nice.
And they'll take your XPS 15 and put better heat contact cement in it, kick it up to 2888 or something on the memory speed, and a few other little goodies. They do it with a few other systems also.
MSI seems to be a big one.
I'm sorry?
MSI and ASUS. So you said they'll take a Dell and soup it up for you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what are you looking at having done to your Dell?
Well, I don't know that I want to have it done. I just thought it was an interesting concept.
I agree. How'd you find them?
Actually, Amazon had some of their pre-hot rodded systems available when I was looking up the Dell XPS 15 on Amazon.
Is that a 15-inch?
It's 15.6.
Let's look at a Dell, see what they've got. Dell XPS 15.
Right.
NVIDIA GTX 1050, 56-watt battery hour, $1439 special price right now.
Yeah, that's the sluggard. That's the low battery and the old processor, I think.
That's a 7th generation i7.
Oh, okay. You can get, yeah, you can get it with a 97, yeah. Anyway, if by the time they get done with it, you're going to pay probably $3,500 for it if they do a full workup.
1869 is not bad.
Yeah, at that price, there's something missing.
A 512 gig M.2 PCI Express. That's an NVMe upgradable to a 2 terabyte. Wow. I bet it is too.
Are you on High Dev's site?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. If you'll go to the most expensive one and configure it, it'll give you an idea of what can be done.
Curious. I'm just looking at the three that they show. New laptops. I went new laptops. Shot by manufacturer. Dell, 15-inch. I didn't tell them to configure. I just said, let's see what you got. And that's how I got these three.
Right. Well, if you go to the bottom one.
2149.
and, Yeah, there's learn more and customize at the bottom of the paragraph there.
Learn more and customize.
That'll give you a list of the stuff you can do on it. Some of it's fancy stuff like engraving and so on, but
Laser engraving. Interesting. Property of. That might be a good idea. Display calibration. That's interesting. That's a pretty good deal for $50 for them. Minimize LCD backlight bleed. That could be a big deal. Have our staff pick the top 20% of panels available. That would definitely be worth $100. Display warranty. That would definitely be worth $135. Video card, that's what you get, a 1050 with 4 gigs.
right.
I'm surprised it's not a 1050 Ti, but that's probably all that's available. CPU stays, stock thermal compound. Interesting. Liquid ultra 100% metal thermal compound for $50. That could pay off. That would pay dividends long term.
The RAM I found kind of interesting. Rip jaws. Are you familiar with that?
G-Skill, we've looked at G-Skill, but we've never used that brand before.
It kicks it up to 2666.
Yep. 16 gigs, up to 32 gigs. Here we are with the M.2. Dell approved, 512 gig M.2. I wonder if that's a Samsung. They don't tell you. But if you choose a Samsung, you'll pay extra for it.
From what I've read, apparently that system comes with at least 2 different M2 drives in it, and one of them is not nearly as speedy as the other, and they don't specify which one they're shipping or charge accordingly.
Curious. You can also get an optical drive external. That's very beneficial. Killer wireless or Intel wireless? But see, I'd rather have the Intel wireless. There have been issues in the past with some connectivity problems. I'd definitely go with Intel on that. Fingerprint reader, Windows 10 Pro. They charge extra to put Windows 8.1 on it. Ooh. Operating system clean install.
Comes with no crapware, basically.
I like that. A recovery USB flash drive. All these little niceties add up, but that could be very beneficial.
How much was that recovery drive, flash drive?
I think it was $25.
Okay.
That's pretty good for $25.
$25 is kind of high for a 4 gig flash drive too.
Oh, 15 minutes worth of work. Guess depends on your perspective. From our perspective, it's kind of high, but for someone buying a machine like this, what's $25? Now for the battery, you can have 130 watt, 2 batteries. So 1 extra battery or 2 extra batteries.
Those are AC adapters, not batteries.
Oh, that's an AC adapter? Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. AC adapter. Well, because the battery's built in. So you got the power adapter and then the power cord. That's interesting. I think that's a little steep. Okay, here we are, the internal battery. It's a 6-cell internal, 97 watt hour. Dell Power Companion. Lets you bring extra power. Interesting. Warranty service. Then they've got their high devolution. Like you said, HIDEV OLUTION. That's interesting. Glad to know about it. Are you thinking about buying one of these from them, Jack?
If I can get my shekels together, yeah. I doubt that I'll go quite that far with it, but
Well, gosh, we're not even halfway down on the page.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, a lot of them are the standard Dell add-ons as far as cases and so on.
Curious. Let us know which one you go with. How soon are you going to be buying your laptop?
When I can get the money together.
So you're looking more at the amount versus the technology?
Yeah, well, this one is the leader in my mind as far as the technology at this point, and I'm always aim for the best. I don't always get it, but
Are you going to get yours with a 4K?
definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
So this will do 4K. 100% Adobe RGB. That could be a big deal, especially when photos and a video. GTX 1050. That's interesting. I can see spending some time looking on this site. I'll have to look into that later.
And they will do it with some Lenovo's and a couple other laptop systems also. Basically, they're trying to make gaming machines out of them, I think. But
High performance.
yeah,
SD card slot. A couple of USB 3 slots.
yeah, that's just the stuff that you're looking at now is just standard boilerplate off the Dell site.
That's what I want to know. The HDMI, DisplayPort 1.2. It says it's got VGA via USB adapter sold separately. Okay. USB 3.1 Generation 2 10 gigabit. And then it says it's got Thunderbolt 3. That's confusing. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
And if I may switch hats again,
Sure.
also this week I gave Xfinity Voice the boot.
Oh, yeah? What'd you do?
I bought an OB High conversion box off of Amazon, the OB High 200, and ported my home number over to Google Voice.
Any trouble doing it?
Only problem I've got so far is I can only get the phone that's connected directly to the OB High to ring in. And I suspect my in-the-wall wiring is just too high resistance for the power the box puts out.
And there's nothing you can do about the wiring in the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are a number of, I guess, voltage increasers, or I'm not sure what the proper term is, that you can plug in between the OB High and the wall jack. But they run about 4 times what the OB High runs, so I'm going to wait before I do that. I'll live with one little bell tinkling for a while.
Gotcha.
But other than that, it went pretty smoothly. I'd have been smarter if I had every hardware and everything in place before I started the process. But you have to, turns out Google Voice will not import a number from Xfinity.
It won't.
No, but they will import a number from
AT&T.
from T-Mobile, or AT&T probably also.
Curious.
And T-Mobile will import one from Xfinity. So I
So you had to.
I ported it over to T-Mobile and then ported it from there over to Google Voice.
How long did that take? A couple extra days?
The port over to T-Mobile took about 5 days. The port over to Google Voice just took overnight.
Interesting. This is about the size of an Intel NUC.
The net result is my phone bill will be 0.
Nice.
No taxes, no fees.
So you went from paying, what, $100 to nothing?
So, come again?
How much were you paying for a phone through Comcast?
About $40, I think,
$40
is what it got kicked up to when I raised my bundle. Yeah,
So you went from $40 down to 0.
yeah.
Now, any idea what the life is on one of these devices?
I do not. The reviews on it don't seem to talk about them burning out very often, so
That's good. The devices we talked about in the past had a life of about a year or two on them.
Yeah, well, even at that, I'm money ahead. I paid $50 for the 200 series.
So far, so good. Thanks for sharing that. Keep us posted and let us know how that. Do you get 911 with this?
You do not. You can subscribe to it through a service for $1 a month.
Might be worth it.
But in my particular
Community?
circumstances, since I'm in the funny farm, 911 goes to the desk downstairs anyway,
Oh, okay.
and then they pass me off to somebody else if they need to.
So they bring up a water hose and hose you down or whatever?
Yeah,
So
right,
if they think you're worth saving, they'll pass it on.
right.
If they don't, it terminates right there.
Yes, I'm very nice to the guys at the desk and the EMTs.
Comes in handy. Okay, folks, any more questions about what we were doing today? The stuff I hope we went through to help John will help you to have a successful build. How far off are you from getting your equipment together, John? You going to do something within the next 30 days? Maybe. Definite maybe. Okay. Well, if anybody else wants to build a computer, let's look at the specs and go through it because I think it's beneficial to do that on occasion. Any more questions today? Well, we're slim pickings, folks. I want to thank you for coming. Appreciate your support. Look forward to seeing you next week. And for those of you online, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please be sure and subscribe to Build or Buy. We'll see you next week. Y'all have a great day. Okay, you can go ahead and cut your computer. That'll be fine.
Oh. Somebody want to give me
And
a
for those
hand?
online, we are now signing off.